All right, let's go around the table, get some Super Bowl picks before we get into issue number one. And, Joe, I'm going to take yours first. Who do you have, and what's the score?
Well, I did so well predicting who would be in the Super Bowl, missing on both teams. So I'm going to say that I think the Eagles and their offensive and defensive line is going to do it. I think they're going to win.
What's your score?
24-20.
All right, Mr. Schultz.
Yeah, the Eagles and Saquon Barkley, 28-24.
Bill.
Yeah, I'm going to say the winner will be the audience. It's going to be a great game. And my apologies, I cannot hear Joe because I unplugged him. So so he's back again.
Are you plugged back in?
I'm plugged back in now.
All right, give me a team and a score.
Okay, going to be Philadelphia 31-27.
Well, we have three Philadelphia picks here. Mike Carl.
I'm going to pick Philadelphia as well, 28-24.
Mr. Height.
All right, so I hate both these teams, so I really don't care. But
you have to pick one.
I would say, I'm going to be the odd man out. I'm going to go with the Chiefs, and I'm going to say that it is really close. It will be 24-21, and the refs make the difference.
24-21, give it to the refs. And Dylan earlier this week picked Kansas City. You still on Kansas City, Dylan?
As of right now, I was about to say thank you, Mike Height. Do we not go around this whole room and everyone picks against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid? Yeah,
it's not. You don't make a lot of money picking against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. But I'm still taking Philadelphia in this one. I think I took 31-27 earlier in the week. I will stand by that one.
This would be the first three-peat, right?
It would be. It's never been done before.
Yeah.
The Dolphins were in 3 in a row in the early 70s. The Bills made 4 in a row. No one's ever won 3 in a row. So we'll see if it happens. History says no, but who knows? All right, we lead off with issue number one. And, Joe, you are the leadoff hitter.
Well, let me first say, Bill, I'm sorry you didn't hear me at the introductions. I just was informing Rob that it's 75 and sunny down here, so I'm sorry you missed that. Okay, so Rob, I've heard it on the Friday Five quite often, and I hear it from my other Republican friends in talking about Donald Trump that they don't really like the man, but they love his policies. Well, I thought we would kind of examine his policies that have been discussed, enacted, or are in theory coming down the pike from the Trump administration, and how they might affect us in West Virginia. Because I've been struck by some of the announcements being made, some of the policies that have been either enacted or soon to be enacted, and the impact it might have on West Virginia. One of the first things he did was the return to work policy. As we know, in the Eastern Panhandle and throughout West Virginia, with its many federal employment centers, a lot of West Virginians work from home. This practice started even before COVID. It was accelerated after COVID. And now these folks are being asked to pack up and get back to work. A lot of people can argue that's a good thing, but that's going to have an impact on a lot of West Virginians. And some may decide, hey, it's not worth it. I don't want to commute to D.C. I'm going to give up that job. Well, maybe that's what the federal government wants. So another policy that was announced was this federal employment purge that's taking place across a lot of federal agencies. A 2023 Census Bureau data shows that 33,000 federal employees reside in West Virginia. That's almost 10% of our workforce. We know the FBI centers in Clarksburg, the Treasury Department has services, fiscal services center in Parkersburg, the IRS center and the Fishery Center, and everything that we got going on in the Eastern Panhandle. Fairmont has NOAA and NASA centers. Morgantown has a Department of Energy Tech Lab. There are a lot of federal employees in West Virginia who are probably getting notices right now to either resign or be subject to termination. And we know all the problems associated with that little program, but that's having and it's going to have a big impact on West Virginia. What about the spending freeze that went into place in a ham-handed way by the Trump administration? West Virginia is 42nd out of 50 states in the receipt of federal dollars. Over half of the childbirths in West Virginia are covered by Medicaid. Governor Morrissey got up and trumpeted the fact that, boy, this is great. The Trump administration is finally getting a handle on spending without any discussion whatsoever about the impact on West Virginia and its reliance on federal money. In 2023, $7.2 billion came to West Virginia for highways, for recreational systems and parks, for camps, which is the assistance given to low-income folks. Not one mention by the governor about how we're going to handle the interruption of such money coming to West Virginia. But that's certainly going to have an impact on West Virginia. The tariffs that, again, were handled in a ham-handed way by the Trump administration, already our second biggest trade partner in the world from West Virginia's perspective, China, has announced in retaliation to tariffs from the Trump administration that they are going to put tariffs on coal and liquefied natural gas. Does that not impact West Virginia adversely? And finally, there's discussion about the EPA is next on the chopping block for the Trump administration. And one of the programs that they are is rumored to be eliminated is the $15 billion in federal funding from the Biden administration to locate and remove lead pipes that provide water to homes. A 2021 state health department, West Virginia State Health Department, indicated, and this, by the way, this study was done after 3 children in Clarksburg were found to have elevated levels of lead in their blood. Their study and their report indicated that about 2/3 of the state's water lines in West Virginia, we don't know what they're composed of. We don't know how they're constructed. We don't know how much lead is in their system. This is a major problem that's going to have to be tackled by the state. The state can't afford to do it on its own, and the federal funding that's going to be in place is subject to being cut, as well as a lot of the EPA employees who administer those funds. They're likely to be cut because of these rollbacks in federal employment and federal funding. So where's that going to leave West Virginia? That's my concern right now, is that while we may not like the man or we like his policies, a lot of these policies are going to have very negative impacts on West Virginia. So is the shine going to start wearing off in terms of how West Virginia sees Trump? That's a question I have this morning.
Thank you, Joe, and appreciate the setup. Let's begin first with Michael Haidt. Delegates?
So I still like the policies. And we're $36 trillion in debt. When you come in and start cutting this bureaucracy where it's not needed, there's always going to be somebody that says, this not us. Don't cut our programs. Well, you have to start somewhere. And is this going to hurt West Virginia? To a degree, absolutely it is. But it's going to hurt all the other states as well. Maybe not to the same degree, but all states are going to be involved in this. If we're not selling coal to China, we'll sell it to somebody else. Maybe not as high, but we'll still sell the coal. Natural gas, we'll still be selling the natural gas. Will West Virginia have to tighten its belt a little bit? Yes. But government should not be a job creator. That's not the purpose of government. So when we look at all these jobs that are being cut, all these government jobs that are being cut, the question is, are they truly needed? And if they're not needed, then they need to be cut. At $36 trillion in debt, you have to start somewhere. We can't continue down the road that we're on right now. We're bankrupting our own country. I don't know what else to say.
Was that the end? Just go scene when you're done, like an actor
Drop
would do.
mic drop. There you go.
Mr. Schultz.
Yes. This is interesting. One thing that wasn't talked about directly is the effect of cuts to Medicaid. They said they were going to shut down Medicaid. They closed the portal for a day. Then they told us that was just a glitch. If you shut down Medicaid, book it. West Virginia hospitals are going to go bankrupt. Big time. Lots of their income comes from Medicaid. As Joe was pointing out, a large percentage of all the babies born in West Virginia, the medical care for that birth is provided by Medicaid. So to the extent you cut that, be ready to drive to Hagerstown the next time you have a medical problem. Because if you cut it too far, and who knows exactly what's too far, certainly Donald Trump doesn't know, you cut it too far, and all of a sudden, WVU hospitals and the other hospital organizations that run the medical care in this state are going to say, no mas, we can't do this. So we are talking about very serious things. I certainly understand what Mike's saying about, we do need to make some cuts. What I don't like is the idea of this blanket cutting that has apparently involved zero analysis of what it's going to do to the people on the ground. I don't think that West Virginians who supported restrictions on abortion want to turn around and have their babies born in bankrupt hospitals. Something tells me that if one of those babies has a medical problem, putting them in a car and running them to Pittsburgh for medical care isn't going to work out very well for anybody. So when we say we are pro-life in this state, we need to act as though we are pro-life. And at the moment, all of that, it seems to me, is at risk.
Mr. Carl.
Well, excuse me. There's all kinds of details and pluses and minuses, but the one principle that we need to always keep in mind is that the federal government spending is incredibly wasteful. There's a lot of wasted money, wasted taxpayer money, and the other major principle to keep in mind is that the free enterprise system provides the services that people need and demand, and we need to enable it to work freely and not be limited too much by the federal government.
Mr. Stubblefield.
Yeah, Mike, you mentioned you like his policies, and we frequently think of his policies being in terms of economic policies. There are other aspects as well that can be troubling to some folks, and that is our relationship with other foreign powers. Do we have allies now that will stick with us, or do we have the feeling that we're being painted in a corner by ourselves? There's evidence that we are being painted in a corner by ourselves. That will come out to be. Also, the fact that chaos seems to be the operative word now. How much can you get done in an environment of chaos? Then it comes back to the economy that we all tend to gravitate to. There is no doubt at all that we spend too much money, and there's no question that we need to find ways to curb the increase. And we tend to throw balloons at the other guy. We've thrown the balloons at the Trump administration by increasing the national debt. COVID was a major contributor to that. But we need to do this in an intelligent manner, and having a group of 10 to 12 folks 25, 26 years of age that have unfettered access to all of our databases, and to use this as to make suggestion of how you can eliminate programs, what programs will be eliminated. There has to be a better way of doing this, and it has to be a more systematic way, because every dollar that we spend, one person can argue it's wasted dollars. Someone else can argue that it's essential. USAID is an example of this. We have a long history of being a caring, compassionate country. We've been the ones that targeted the elimination of polio in the third world. We're the ones that address the HIV, AID issue more so than anyone else. We're the ones that did the tuberculosis, malaria, and the like. We have been the ones that have promoted a systematic and I believe compassionate addressing various health issues. Now we're walking away from that. What does that do to our long-standing reputation? We care for our fellow man. There's a lot of things that we need to address, no question about it. The question is, are we addressing them in the right way? We're literally taking a meat axe and carving off huge chunks and talking about a scalpel. A scalpel is an instrument of the past. We've got to get to these problems, but how do you best do it?
Joe, comes back to you for a minute.
Yeah, and Bill, to pick up on your point, because what Mike Height says is very hard to refute, obviously, because we can just look at the numbers and say, yeah, we've got a spending problem, and we need to start making cuts. It's all in the implementation of these efforts to cut, which has me concerned. My goal this morning was to point out some of the maybe unintended and in other cases profound impacts that some of these maneuvers are going to have just on West Virginia as a singular perspective here. These impacts undoubtedly will be felt across the country. But are we getting any confidence? Do we have any idea at this point that these efforts to cut back on federal employment and federal spending is being done in a deliberative and educated way? Or are we adopting the policy that Elon Musk exercised when he took over Twitter and just showed 2/3 of the workforce the door? You could do that in a private company, and you can argue whether or not even that effort was successful given Twitter's performance since he took over. But to do that at a federal government level, understanding that the relationship between a state like West Virginia and the federal government is so intertwined, to do that without a deliberative process is really dangerous. And I just look at, and this is coming, I know the EPA is going to be on the chopping block, and I know a lot of funding of those programs are going to be front and center for being cut. And tell me, convince me that we shouldn't have money to go out there and find these lead pipes and get them out of the ground. I mean, that has a direct health impact on young people who someday may become wards of the state because of developmental problems they experience because of the water they drank. That's where you spend a penny today to save $1 in the future. And that's the kind of deliberative process we need to have. And I'm getting no confidence, albeit it's only been 3 weeks, but I am not getting any confidence that the kind of cutting and the kind of reductions in force that are taking place are being done with any thought. It's just, as Bill mentioned, it's just going in with a meat axe and decapitating some of these agencies. And I think we're going to pay a dear price for that across the country, and certainly in a state that depends on federal money and federal employment, we're going to feel those impacts in West Virginia.
We had a guest on earlier this week, bipartisan organization, Committee for Federal Budget Reform. I don't think I'm getting it exactly correct. We talked about some of the numbers and trimming the federal workforce and what have you, and the effect that would have on the debt, the deficit, and such. And the real big truck in the tunnel here is Social Security, Medicare, the Defense Department, and the interest on the debt. Everything else is peanuts compared to that when you add those 4 items up as to how much we spend in a year. So we can trim around the edges, and I don't think there's a taxpayer out there who would say we should employ one more necessary tax-paid employee than we have. No, I don't think anybody would agree with that, right? And if you're looking to purge a workforce, I think we would all agree you should purge the least effective people first, people who aren't doing their job. That's not what's happening right now. There's been no, give me your list of people who got a failing grade. It's been you got till Thursday to accept this resignation. We'll pay you until September 30th. Even though there's lawsuits about him not living up to that at Twitter, okay? And that's just been blocked by a judge. If you don't accept this, by the way, you could also get furloughed. So if you're a federal employee, and this is close to me because my wife has worked for the FDA for 27 years. So there you are, and you're looking at this email, and you go, all right, do I take this to September 30th, even though March 14th is going to be a government shutdown anyway, and who knows if they're going to live up to this? Or do I stay at the job that I like and then get fired, regardless of my performance? Those are my two choices right now as a federal employee. And I know a lot of folks in our comment section right now, the federal employees have been made to be the bad guy. Caroline Levitt said that the federal employees who work at home have been ripping off the government for years and it has to end. I don't know if any of you work at home. Maybe you do screw off when you work at home. I know my wife does not. In fact, she's donated every lunch half hour of her federal career to the federal government and worked through it. And she knows a lot of people in her department have done the same. But for those of you, Mike Height, I'm talking to you specifically. I saw Mike Hornby's commentary on there too, who say cut the bureaucracy. That's great. Let's do that. Let's not charge taxpayers $1 more than they should be charged. But then, as a delegate, don't you ever accept a meal from a lobbyist who's been paid by a taxpayer. And if you do, you better write a check and send it back. Have you taken meals from lobbyists who are paid by taxpayers, Mike? Because if you have, you've wasted taxpayer dollars because you can afford to feed yourself. And that goes for all 100 delegates and all 34 senators and the governor and every congressman and everybody who's ever accepted a meal from a lobbyist paid by a taxpayer. Because that's food that you could feed yourself because you can afford to. So if we're going to hold people accountable and trim around the edges, you better be prepared, Mike Hornby, Mike Height, and all of your folks in Charleston to do the same thing when it's your turn to examine yourself. Right? Let's all live by the same code. No bumper music. I'm out of time. You can have that when you come back. Dylan, we're going right into the break. This is Talk Radio WRNR Martinsburg. And with issue number 2, the Admiral, Bill Stubblefield.
Before I go to my issue, Rob, I share with a lot of folks on our Facebook how much I appreciated your rant. I thought it was right on target. I had the privilege.
I didn't even look.
Well, I had the privilege along the